It was a bitterly cold night in Beijing, November 14th, 1995. The streets were cloaked in silence, the kind of silence that makes you feel like the city itself is holding its breath. Dim streetlights flickered against the mist, and the sound of the final bus of the evening, Route 375, echoed through the empty roads. Inside the station, only a handful of weary passengers waited, their breath visible in the freezing air. When the bus doors creaked open, the smell of oil and rust drifted out, and the passengers climbed aboard one by one. The driver didn't say a word, his face hidden in shadow, and the conductor's eyes seemed tired, almost hollow. The doors slammed shut with a metallic snap, sealing everyone inside. To those few passengers, this was supposed to be nothing more than the last ride home. But as the bus pulled away and disappeared into the fog, no one could have known that none of them would ever reach their destination.
Before we dive deeper into this chilling mystery, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the nightmares waiting just around the corner.
The bus groaned along the deserted road, its headlights cutting through a thick curtain of fog. Inside, the passengers sat in uneasy silence, lulled only by the rattling windows and the low hum of the engine. But then, without warning, the bus slowed to a stop in the middle of nowhere. There was no station, no sign of life, just endless darkness stretching on both sides of the road. That's when they saw them. 3 figures standing on the roadside, half hidden by the mist. 2 tall men were holding up a third, dragging him between them like dead weight. His head lolled unnaturally to one side, and his long hair covered most of his face. The way his body sagged, it didn't look like someone drunk or even injured. It looked like a corpse being carried. Their clothing was strange, layers of faded robes that seemed decades, maybe even centuries out of place. And though the wind was biting cold, their garments didn't move, not even a flutter. For a moment, nobody on the bus dared to breathe. Then, with an agonizing hiss, the driver pulled the lever. The doors opened. The 3 figures climbed aboard in silence. No one spoke, no one dared to, but every passenger could feel it. The instant they stepped inside, the temperature dropped. It felt as if the night itself had followed them onto the bus.
Paragraph 3. Something wasn't right. At first, the bus moved again, its engine groaning as it crawled deeper into the night. No one dared to look directly at the 3 newcomers. Yet every passenger felt their presence, like a heavy shadow pressing down on the air. The silence inside was suffocating. Only the sound of the wheels grinding against the asphalt reminded them they were still moving. The young man by the window finally stole a glance. His breath caught in his throat. The 3 figures were sitting perfectly still, their heads lowered, their faces hidden. But it wasn't that which froze the blood in his veins. It was their feet, or rather, the lack of them. Their robes dangled just above the floor, untouched, as though they weren't really seated, but hovering. Each turn of the bus made their bodies sway unnaturally, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. The young man's heart pounded so loudly he feared the others might hear it. A wave of cold swept through the bus, far colder than the November air outside. Frost began to creep along the windows, as if the warmth of the living no longer belonged there. One of the passengers shivered violently, clutching their coat tighter, while another stared ahead, refusing to blink, as though acknowledging the figures might invite something worse. The young man turned his eyes away, trying to steady his breath, but deep down, he already knew. Something on that bus wasn't human. The bus groaned along the deserted road, its headlights cutting through a thick curtain of fog. Inside, the passengers sat in uneasy silence, lulled only by the rattling windows and the low hum of the engine. But then, without warning, the bus slowed to a stop in the middle of nowhere. There was no station, no sign of life, just endless darkness stretching on both sides of the road. That's when they saw them. 3 figures standing on the roadside, half hidden by the mist. 2 tall men were holding up a third, dragging him between them like dead weight. His head lolled unnaturally to one side, and his long hair covered most of his face. The way his body sagged, it didn't look like someone drunk or even injured. It looked like a corpse being carried.
Their clothing was strange, layers of faded robes that seemed decades, maybe even centuries out of place. And though the wind was biting cold, their garments didn't move, not even a flutter. For a moment, nobody on the bus dared to breathe. Then, with an agonizing hiss, the driver pulled the lever. The doors opened. The 3 figures climbed aboard in silence. No one spoke. No one dared to. But every passenger could feel it. The instant they stepped inside, the temperature dropped. It felt as if the night itself had followed them onto the bus.
The young man stumbled along the roadside, his breath turning to white clouds in the icy air. His pulse was still racing, his chest heaving from both anger and fear. He turned sharply to the old woman, his voice trembling with frustration. "Why did you do that? I didn't steal anything. You embarrassed me in front of everyone." The old woman didn't answer at first. Her wrinkled hand tightened around his sleeve, her grip far stronger than her frail body suggested. She waited until the bus's red taillights disappeared completely into the suffocating fog. Only then did she slowly turn to him. Her eyes, once filled with fire and rage, now shimmered with something else entirely. Terror. Her voice dropped to a hoarse whisper, almost as if she was afraid the night itself was listening.
"I know you didn't steal from me," she said, her words deliberate, heavy, chilling. "I lied. It was the only way to get you off that bus." The young man blinked in disbelief, confusion flashing across his face. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. She leaned closer, her breath cold against his ear, and in that moment, her trembling words cut deeper than the icy wind ever could. "Those 3 people, the ones who got on just now, they weren't alive." The young man's blood ran cold. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His mind replayed the images, the dangling robes, the hovering bodies, the unnatural chill that clung to the air. He had tried to ignore it, to rationalize it, but now, standing in the endless dark with only this old woman beside him, there was no denying it. He hadn't been pulled off the bus in shame. He had been pulled off in time.
For 3 days, the disappearance of Bus 375 baffled Beijing. Families reported missing loved ones. The transit authority insisted the bus had vanished off its scheduled route, and police patrols scoured the highways in vain. Whispers spread quickly. Some said it was a hijacking. Others whispered about government cover-ups. But the truth was far more disturbing. On the 4th day, a maintenance worker at the Miyun Reservoir noticed something strange beneath the surface of the water. Metal glinting in the pale morning light. Authorities rushed to the scene, and what they dredged up sent shockwaves through the city. There it was, the missing bus. Its once red paint was now peeling and rusted, streaked with algae and mud. The windows were fogged, cracked, and smeared from the inside with something dark. When investigators pried the doors open, the stench hit them first, thick, rancid, unhuman.
Inside, they found the bodies. The driver slumped over the wheel. The conductor sprawled in the aisle.
Both were already decomposing, far beyond what should have been possible in just a few days. Their skin gray and peeling, their mouths twisted into silent screams. And in the very back seat was a third body, one no one could identify. Its features were unrecognizable, the flesh bloated, distorted, as if it had been dead far longer than the others. But the most chilling detail wasn't the corpses, it was the bus itself. When the police examined the fuel tank, they expected to find it empty. There was no way it could have traveled that far. Instead, they recoiled in horror. The tank wasn't filled with gasoline. It was filled with blood.
The discovery should have brought closure, but instead it only raised more terrifying questions. How had the bus traveled to the reservoir with so little fuel? Why did the bodies decay at a speed that defied science? And, most haunting of all, who was the third corpse in the back seat? The authorities released no names, no photographs. Official reports quietly vanished, and the story was buried beneath a wave of censorship. Yet the rumors only grew. Locals whispered that the 3 passengers in ancient robes were not men at all, but restless spirits wandering Beijing's roads, searching for the living to drag into the afterlife. Some swore the government covered it up because the truth was too horrifying for the public. Others believed the reservoir itself was cursed, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead had always been dangerously thin.
But among the people, one detail was always the same: the old woman's warning. Survivors passed it down like a cautionary tale. Never take the last bus of the night, and if you do, pray that no strangers climb aboard. Even today, if you stand alone on a foggy Beijing street, locals say you can still hear it, the low, metallic groan of Bus 375 rolling through the mist. No driver, no conductor. Just a phantom bus, doomed to repeat its final journey, forever searching for its next unlucky passenger. So the next time you're waiting in the dead of night and a bus pulls up out of the fog, look twice, because sometimes getting on might mean you'll never get off.